Hey, what's up, you guys? This is Elliot tuning back in, The Bachelor from the Bachelor and the Dad podcast. I wanted to make a video real quick just to clarify something about the mission statement of this podcast. And I kind of want to get a lot of this stuff out of the way. There will probably be several of these videos coming out just so that we get moving in the right direction. But basically, this podcast is not a response to feminism. I mentioned that this is a kind of group for men, and I think that there's a certain weakness to making something that's a reaction, right? That's making something that's a reaction to a movement. And I think that one of the things with a lot of men's movements today is they go too far down the rabbit hole of criticizing feminism. And really, if you think about it, what they're doing is they're criticizing women. And the truth is that men and women are very different from each other in a lot of respects. Now, it is true that there are more men and women both have masculine and feminine energies and traits within themselves as a human being, because we're all born from a combination of a man and a woman. So that is true, but there are things that make us, there are unique things that crop up in being a man, and there are unique things that crop up in being a woman that just have to do with our biology, right? And I don't think I need to go too far into critiquing people who, think that there's no such thing as men and women or anything like that. We don't need to go into those special interest areas. We don't need to critique LGBTQ. We don't need to critique feminism necessarily in this video. Now, we are going to be talking about what it means to really step into your power as a man. And because, truthfully, in the last, since the 60s especially, there's been a huge feminization of society, which a lot of people have picked up on, including myself. Maybe as a bit of background to who I am, both of my parents. I was born in Pennsylvania, but then I moved to California, and both of my parents are at this point very Californian in their orientation, and California in general has a little bit more of feminine energy, as I feel often coastal cities do. But California particularly has that energy, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of spontaneity and creativity that comes out of California. Obviously, the entertainment industry is really big down here. But one of the things I've reflected on being from California and having spent a lot of my time on the coast is that, and also reflecting on what's going on in the country right now and knowing about history and all these other things, is that what we're seeing right now is a potential for a great divide in the country. And that divide is not necessarily bad, but we need to handle that divide skillfully, and there needs to be understanding amongst groups of people. So there's always been a difference between West Coast and East Coast. There's been certain, the natural landscape affects how people live, and the history of the West Coast and East Coast are different, and they affect different sensibilities that people have from the coast. The same is true of, the coasts compared to the center of the country. When you really get into it, and if you start embracing more of an indigenous perspective of the world, you're going to see that, and you start learning about history of indigenous people of even this country, you're going to see that we're really, as human beings, we're more about tribes. We're about tribalism. It's interesting. I was looking at. I'm Buddhist and Christian, I would say, and one of the Buddhist gentlemen that I'm aware of and that I follow, he made this whole course on a Buddhist. What do you call it? Sorry, I'm having trouble thinking right now. I'm saying a lot. This gentleman named Stephen Batchelor, he made a course called, or actually it was Stephen Batchelor, and it was also this guy named Robert Wright. They made these courses online about going against tribalism and stopping tribalism. But there's another way of looking at what's happening in the country and saying that it's not really tribalism which is the problem. Tribalism is natural to a certain part of our development as human beings, and we need tribes in order to socialize each other or socialize ourselves. But it's more about understanding amongst tribes, right? And I think that is one of the great exports of democracy is diplomacy. And that's something that's that we need to keep intact in the country, despite how much we want to put up borders and we want to put up trade boundaries between us and other countries. And if we want to start doing more production within this country, which I would say would be good, especially for men who tend to be in more production-based fields. And men are struggling right now in this country. I think that would be really smart to do more production in this country. But what was I saying? Despite however many boundaries we have, despite how tribal we get, one of the great exports also of this country is diplomacy. And we need to move away from warmongering. We need to move away from meddling in other countries' politics where it's not necessary or helpful. And we need to look at our history as a country to reconcile what is skillful in terms of diplomacy and policing of other countries. If we can't police our own citizens well, we have no business policing the rest of the world. And the policing of our own citizens can be improved greatly. When a lot of people have lost trust in the police force, which is definitely the case with a good chunk of the population, and also in the government, that is a sign for worry. So how does this wrap into what we're doing here as part of this podcast and this community and this group? Is that we are trying to have both men who are bachelors, because there's a lot of single men out there. And the reason I know that is because there's a lot of single women in their 30s. We want to get the bachelors and also the guys who have families, and we want to start to talk about and discuss and answer some of the questions that are coming up in the next 100 years that have to do with automation of jobs that have tended to be more male dominant. What are we going to do about that as guys? It's not good enough to sit at home and jerk off to pornography and be on YouTube all day and play video games. Now, that is one of the great things. Like, I'm not going to say that those things are completely bad. I'm more of a centrist with some of it. But the thing is that there's way too much of it. If you don't see that, I don't know what, you're either a saint or you live like a saint, or you're not aware of what's going on in society right now with men. We've developed as a society all of these different mechanisms to become more effeminate in a way. And what I mean by that is like the negative sense of being effeminate, in the sense that things are very pleasure-based and things are very much based on how people are feeling. That's a very bad sign for society to have it at the level that it's at now. It means that the society is going downhill. And as men, one of the gifts that we have is we have the gift of vision. We have the gift of hunting. When you're out hunting, I haven't been hunting, but I've done many activities that are akin to hunting, I believe. When you're out hunting, what happens to your perception and your awareness is you lift your head up, you stand up straight, and your awareness becomes more panoramic, right? It becomes more, you're able to see everything that's happening. And that is an archetypal male masculine energy. Another part of that vision aspect is that you can, based on that vision, you can shoot your arrow, you can penetrate, right? Masculine, the phallus, Shiva Lingam, the cock. Sorry. But yeah, you have that ability to have the vision, and you have the ability to penetrate the phenomenal world. Now, we need to have the balance. Like I said, all men and women have both of these energies, but I think that men are really struggling right now, so I see there is this opportunity for us as men to reflect on the direction that society is going. I am not one of the people that believes that, is a liberal who believes that all white males are the problem with what is going on currently in society. That's not true. That's only true if you're extremely ungrateful. If you or I'm not saying that white males have done everything, so don't get me wrong. It's always, everything I say is always going to have light and dark, but to say that white males are the cause of all issues we currently see in society, all issues we currently see in the world, is negating all of the positive things that America is built on. Yes, we had slavery. Yes, we really abolished and destroyed the culture of Native American people. America is a bloody and violent place. I'm never going to say that it's not that, but to see what America has created for itself, and now I'm saying that's on the decline, but to see what, and we can bring that back up, but to see what America has created for itself, and to see what it has exported, and only to see it as negative is an unbalanced perspective. And to say that that's only white people, white males, is unbalanced, and it's not true. So if I'm saying this in particular to any white males that are out there and that are extremely angry at this liberal doctrine of white guilt, and in particular guilt about white males and what they've contributed. There's been a lot of bad shit. We can go there. We can talk about it. Society needs to go there. They need to discuss it. There needs to be a healing ceremony, and we need to move on if that's necessary. We can discuss the merits of that. So, again, we as men need to have discussions about this. There are reports of more and more men dropping out of the workforce. There's reports of more and more jobs that men have tended to do being replaced by automation. And in some sense, I do believe that the future is female. And what I mean by that is that if you think about automation, if you think about what it's going to take for us as a global society to survive in the 21st century, it's going to be communication. It's going to be dialogue. It's going to be having to resort to dialogue, which men are very skilled at in their own way, as are women. We're going to need to resort to dialogue to resolve our issues, and we're going to need to resort to smart policies, and we're going to need to resort to discussion, which is a fantastic thing about YouTube. So we're going to need that. And the people who seem to be doing this job more and more, think about the jobs in America that women have tended to do in terms of what is it that the feminine aspect tends to do? It tends to nurture. It tends to want to be very chatty. It tends to be focused more on relationship, generally speaking. So these are also things that men do, but they talk about things from a different angle. And you have to understand that there's a different way of being a chatty man and a chatty woman. Guys who are chatty are going to be philosophers. They're going to be all up in their head, so to speak. While there's a lot of issues associated with being up in your head, it is important to know that that men think differently, critically think differently than women. So if you're a guy out there who's struggling with where society's going, you should know that the way that men and women critically think, generally speaking, is different. And we need both voices in the mix. Now, there's obviously a huge problem in the dating scene. I can tell you that by being a bachelor. And there's a lot we have to discuss there as well. In terms of what is the 21st century family going to look like? What is it like already? Quite frankly, I have a couple of good friends, at least, that are. I'm pretty sure that both of their two of my good friends, who I won't name, their wives are making more money than them right now, and their jobs as men, their wives' jobs are the more stable ones, and their jobs are the more unstable ones. Now, as a guy, you could be like, oh, this means I'm becoming a Susie homemaker and I have to be like a woman now. That's not true at all. That's not true at all. If your business is from home, and if you are cooking, that's not necessarily a feminine thing to do. It could be masculine or feminine. So we just really need to be flexible in the 21st century. We've undertaken this. One of the aspects of America and what it's done to the world, and really ramped up in the last 100 years, is this process of globalization. And I'm really sympathetic to Donald Trump and all Trump's supporters for wanting to put up walls, because one thing that globalization has done, and a lot of other movements such as postmodernism and stuff like that, is relativized everything. It has mixed everything. And we're very disoriented right now. You could probably even hear it in the way this conversation I'm talking to you about is jumping all over the place. But the thing is that one of the things as men, the archetype of a man, is you can bring things in order and you can understand things correctly. So what we're exploring here is, what is the role of a bachelor in the 21st century, in the next 100 years? What are we going to teach our sons and daughters? And if we're a bachelor, our nieces and nephews, or maybe we're a bachelor as a teacher, the kids that we teach. What are we going to teach as bachelors to the society? What are we going to emulate? How are we going to be upright and decent and dignified human beings as bachelors? And also, how do we move to a position of being a family person if we want that? And also, if we're a family man, how do we understand what's going on in society as well? We need to have clear constructs and clear conversations about what needs to happen. And the more that we put it off, the more that we play video games all day, or watch YouTube all day, or watch pornography and masturbate all day long, the more that we slip into a society that is more automated and where it is more possible for us to do this, we just need to be asking ourselves, do we want to, as men, just be pleasure-seeking blobs who are bachelors or who are married men. We need to be aware of the narratives of feminism and what feminism has said about the negative things that feminism has said about both women and men. The characterizing women as a victim of men, and the characterizing of men as monsters who have destroyed the world and who didn't make any contributions in the past. That's not true. You need to know that's not true, and then you need to accept that that's not true, and then you need to figure out what the next step is for you in your life. One topic that really interests me personally that I want to go into deeply in other videos, these are just kind of like introductory videos, but I want to go deeply into these subjects, is death. And I'm actually going to be applying for a job as a chaplain, a hospital chaplain. Like I said, I've studied Buddhism and I also have a background in Christianity. I kind of consider that I have a bit of both in me, or that I see the world through the lens of both. And I have that faith. I definitely have that faith based on logic. Anyways, we can do that. But I want to talk about death, and I want to talk about how death is an impetus for life. We need to understand how death is going to push us as men to band together and to have some of these difficult conversations about our own shitty habits and our own the areas where we compromise what we know to be right for pleasure, for not that pleasure is wrong, but excessive addiction to pleasure, right? Or excessive addiction to being numb, right? Opioids. Being so masculine and stoic to the point where you can't feel. Things like that. So I think these are discussions, obviously, that anyone can have, but I want to target this towards men because I'm hearing, and I've experienced myself, a real challenge being a man in the 21st century. I experience it in the dating apps. I'm a bachelor, remember? Dating apps. Attitudes of women that are very difficult for me to understand. And also just it really has to do with my own feelings about it. So this channel is going to be about sorting out, not only for myself, but sorting out for a lot of you who feel similar to me and who are connected to some of the things I'm talking about here, helping us sort out some of these issues so we have a clear sense of direction for our life as men, moving forward from 18 to being in our 20s, to being in our 30s, to being in our 40s, to being in our 50s, however old you are, and dealing with this modern society that's rapidly changing, and that we're actually, luckily, in a certain way, I feel for all of the families out there, but we're getting a certain pause with the coronavirus to actually reflect here. And I think if we do this correctly, and there is more automation, but there is more support for people in society, there's going to be the opportunity for men to, more men are going to be at home, frankly. I'd like to say it's not true, but I think it's going to be true. The only way that I can see that there'd be a big opening for men in the workforce is that if we can start if the government, or I guess some big corporate giant, decides to revamp America, like redo the roads, do a lot of greening of the society, solar panels, this sort of thing. There's a lot of physical labor to be done, then that's going to draw, and it pays, that's going to draw men out of the house. Men are going to love to do that. and they should love to do it, and that should be encouraged. But the truth is that there's also, assuming that's not going to happen, and assuming that we're going to have a lot of these men who are engineers in Silicon Valley, so on and so forth, which is around where I live, if they're going to be automating away a lot of the jobs, including things like construction, they're going to be simplifying things like construction down to where anyone can be a carpenter, and it's just as easy for a man or a woman to build a home or whatever it is. Then we really need to think as men, how do we fit into that? And especially if we want to have some dignity about being a man, if we don't want to be asexual or homosexual or what's the other one? Asexual, homosexual, or transgender. If we want to have the identity of a man, and part of that identity is, potentially having a family or being a bachelor. So we need to discuss what that looks like, and we need to talk as a group. This is me kind of letting it all out on the table, but the idea with this is that we're actually going to talk to a lot of different men. We're doing a lot of different work in society and get their ideas about what it means to navigate some of the issues that are popping up in society right now. Now, one last thing I want to say. I talked a lot about I'm talking about being a man and all this stuff. Ultimately, what this is about is not, and maybe that's a paradox to you, it's not about continuing the gender wars. It's not about continuing to justify, especially as a man, but it's not about continuing to justify myself as a victim as a man of society, or justifying my manlyhood. It's not about that. It's just about resolving an issue that's clearly there. And the issue is an issue of relationship between men and women that you see cropping up definitely in your 30s. It's almost like it's a triple whammy right now. We've got dating apps. We've got women who... I live close to San Francisco, so there's a lot of women who are professionals that have focused on their own pleasure seeking, just as many men have, and their own free-spiritedness that they thought was oh so great in their 20s, and now they're in their 30s. It's getting close to, they only have 5 or 10 years to have kids, and they see all their friends have gotten married, and they see that following your bliss is not all it was cracked up to be, and they want to have a family. And there's a lot of men who are in the same place, and men need to have a clear idea and understanding of how to approach these women and how to move towards having a family with them in a positive way, a way where you don't feel bad about the choices of your 20s in a kind of repressed way. But you acknowledge what your 20s were about, and you can move into your 30s with dignity, grace, and having healed. Not holding on to the fact that you may have been a slut in your 20s. You may have been a gigolo, a guy who sleeps around a lot. I don't know what the terms are for that these days, but you may have been a male or a female in your 20s who slept around a lot. You may have also traveled a bunch, been all about new experiences, but you realize that isn't really a fulfilling path for you anymore, and you want to move towards being a man and being a woman and having a family and being connected as a man and woman. And part of being connected as a man and a woman is understanding that you're different, that the things you were taught about men and women being the same is not true. And you need to be able to appreciate women, right? And you need to be able to understand, part of appreciating women is understanding how you're different from them. And understanding how your path is going to be different from them. The way you're going to perceive the world is going to be different from them. And that, that. So this has been a bit of a rant. This is some of the introductory remarks about some of the inspiration that is causing me to want to start this channel. And not causing me, but is the inspiration. It's not a cause, it's an inspiration to start this channel. Things I'm noticing in society. And it's nothing new, but I hope that we have a bit of a unique take on it with me and my buddy Liam. One last thing I'll say is that Liam and I went to high school together. We went together to high school up in Canada, and we're both American, and we're both, we are from very similar backgrounds in one way, but who we are is very similar in certain ways, and it's very different in other ways. So, again, yeah, he's African American. He lives in Indiana. I'm a white Bay Area guy who lives down in the Bay Area. I spent a lot of time living up in Canada as well, and we're gonna dig into what it is that we find being a man is about for us in our 30s. There's a lot of growth that we're both kind of dedicated to, and in a lot of different areas. So part of this channel, in terms of the nuts and bolts of what we're going to be able to offer you guys, is conversations with a lot of different men who we find are living their life in an inspiring way, in a way that inspires us and that motivates us not to be wasting all our day on YouTube, not to be wasting all of our day on pornography, not to be wasting all of our day on video games, not to be wasting all of our day on pleasure seeking, going and sleeping with girls on Tinder, finding value and meaning where we can contribute to our world and our family through business, through community service, through the way we show up in our families, this sort of thing. So we're going to be interviewing men that evoke that, and we're going to talk to them about their professions, about their family, about what their challenges are these days and how they're dealing with it. We're not going to just go on and on about challenges. We're going to talk about specific tips and tricks on how people deal with their challenges, and also hopefully just cover some inspirational stories. One of the things I want to do is do some storytelling. Tell you guys some stories about my life and things that I learned. And again, this is just, this video here has been more an introductory rant about a lot of the kind of cascading topics and ideas that I see, frankly, spending a lot of time on YouTube and spending a lot of time on the internet and feeling just in my gut the call to serve, right? So that I wanted to tell you about some of the issues and the problems I see as a man with society, and this is kind of the broad brushstroke, and we'll get into the finer grain stuff later. So you guys, I don't want to bore you. We're also going to be doing things like question and answers, live stream chats. I really want a lot of feedback from people as part of this channel, so why don't we end this video with this? In the comments below, if you're a guy, tell me one of the biggest challenges you have as a man today in your day-to-day life being a man. This is only for guys who identify as men, okay? So for guys that identify as men, tell me the biggest challenge you have being a man today in today's society, because I want to know, because these are things that I want to address in this channel. Second one would be if you're a woman, or I guess someone who identifies as a woman, but more for women, biological women. If you're a woman, this isn't a channel for, by the way, I'm just going to be straight up and honest with you, this isn't a channel for the LGBTQ community. This is more focused on men and women, people who are biological men and biological women. I'm not saying that we don't welcome those folks here, but that's who I'm going to be targeting to. So I just want to let you know that. So for women, or people who identify as women, and if you want, you're welcome to chime in. But for women, what is one of the biggest challenges you have in dealing with men in modern society? Are you a working professional in the Bay Area who works for a big app company and is 32 and is an amazing person and has been on a lot of amazing adventures, but you have no clue how to bring a man into your life? Let me know what it is specifically that you're bumping up against in the dating world, or whatever it may be. Let us know specifically in the comments your challenges with men. Women, please let us know. We will do our best to contemplate that as men, and we will get back to you on that. We will get back to you in our own way. So, with that being said, guys, I'm going to sign off here. I hope this has been a cathartic video for you to listen to. I hope it touched on some emotional points that hit home for you. And I hope you leave some comments about the things that you're bumping up into as a man or a woman in dealing with masculinity these days, so that we can go more in depth about that. So with that being said, have a great evening, everyone. Take care, and we will see you on the next video. Bye-bye.